A long time before Blackbeard became a symbol of terror, before his name spread across ports and was carved into legends, he was simply Edward Teach, a sailor shaped by an Atlantic world obsessed with trade, war, and money. His story is tied to economic forces of the early 18th century. It was a time when empires expanded faster than they could control the seas. Violence was not a breakdown of order, it was one of its tools. Edward Teach was likely born around 1680, probably in Bristol or London. These were two cities deeply connected to maritime trade. Britain was not just a nation, but a commercial empire. Its power depended on shipping lanes, colonial ports, and financial systems that relied on goods constantly moving across the ocean. Sugar, tobacco, rum, enslaved labor. Timber and silver formed the lifeblood of this empire. Anyone who understood ships understood power. Teach learned this early. As a young man, he almost certainly served as a privateer during the War of the Spanish Succession. Privateers were sailors legally authorized by the crown to attack enemy ships. They were like pirates with paperwork. Governments preferred them because they were cheaper. Instead of funding large navies, states outsourced risk to private crews, who only got paid if they succeeded. For sailors, privateering meant wealth and status. For governments, it was war on credit. When the war ended in 1714, the system collapsed overnight. Thousands of sailors lost their jobs. Ships were decommissioned. Skills honed for violence had no peaceful market. Trade shrank, wages dropped, and ports filled with desperate men who knew only one way to survive at sea. Piracy was not a sudden moral collapse, it was an economic shift. Teach moved toward the Caribbean, where imperial control was weak and opportunity was strong. There he met Benjamin Hornigold, an experienced pirate who saw Teach's intelligence and presence. Hornigold mentored him, teaching strategy, discipline, and, most importantly, reputation management. Piracy was not just about taking ships, it was about convincing ships to surrender. Teach learned this lesson well. When he eventually took command of his own ship, he reinvented himself. Edward Teach became Blackbeard. The name alone was threatening, but his actions completed the image. He braided his long black beard and tied slow-burning fuses into it, lighting them before battles so smoke filled the air around his face. He wore dark clothing, carried multiple pistols across his chest, and cultivated an image that blurred the line between reality and nightmare. This was psychological warfare. Blackbeard understood that fear saved resources. A ship that surrendered intact was far more valuable than one damaged by cannon fire. Crews that believed resistance was pointless did
not fight. His reputation became a weapon more powerful than guns. His rise quickened when he captured the French slave ship La Concorde. Instead of looting and abandoning it, Blackbeard refitted the vessel, armed it heavily, and renamed it Queen Anne's Revenge. With around 40
cannons, it became one of the most formidable ships in the Atlantic. This was not excess, it was investment. Queen Anne's Revenge allowed Blackbeard to dominate shipping lanes. He could choose targets, avoid warships, and control entire regions. He was no longer just a pirate. He was an independent naval power. What followed was not random violence, but planned economic disruption. Blackbeard targeted choke points. He knew that ports were fragile ecosystems. Merchants relied on predictable arrivals. Credit was given against cargo that had not yet docked. Insurance markets in London calculated risk based on stability. Interrupt the flow and panic spread faster than cannon fire. His most notorious act was the blockade of Charleston, South Carolina, in 1718. Charleston was one of the wealthiest ports in British North America. Blackbeard stationed his ships at the harbor entrance and halted all traffic. He seized merchant ships and took passengers hostage. The city froze. Merchants panicked. Trade stopped. The Z's threatened. Instead of demanding gold or silver, Blackbeard asked for a chest of medicine. This was not mercy, it was strategy. Medicine was more valuable than money at that moment. Control over health meant control over negotiation. Charleston complied. Blackbeard released the hostages. The blockade ended. No city was burned. No massacre occurred. The message was clear. Commerce existed at his permission. Pirate society was very different from the empires it preyed upon. Pirate crews operated under written agreements. Captains were elected. Loot was divided according to contracts. Injuries were compensated. Losing a limb meant guaranteed payment. Compared to the rigid hierarchies of navies and merchant fleets, piracy offered something close to economic democracy. Blackbeard was not an exception to the system. He benefited from it. Yet piracy was not sustainable in the long run. It thrived in chaos, but chaos invites consolidation. As piracy grew, it threatened the financial foundations of empire. Insurance costs rose. Shipping slowed. Investors complained. Pressure built in London to restore confidence. The British response was not only military, it was political and financial. The Crown offered pardons to pirates willing to surrender. Many accepted. Piracy briefly declined. Blackbeard himself accepted a pardon from the governor of North Carolina. Publicly, he retired. Privately, he returned to piracy with political protection. Bribery played a key role. Colonial governors were often underpaid and loosely supervised. Blackbeard shared profits, turning officials into silent partners. This blurred the line between crime and authority. Piracy became embedded within colonial governance. But tolerance has limits. Blackbeard's ongoing activities threatened trade stability. His fame made him unpredictable. He became a liability. Virginia's governor, Alexander Spotswood, chose to eliminate him without authorization. Lieutenant Robert Maynard was sent with 2 small ships. The mission was not symbolic, it was practical. Remove the disruption. Restore order. The final confrontation happened at Ocracoke Island. The battle was violent and chaotic. Blackbeard was shot multiple times and slashed repeatedly. Witnesses later claimed he kept fighting despite severe wounds. When he finally fell, it took overwhelming force to end him. His head was severed and hung from Maynard's ship as proof of his death. The act was theatrical, but its purpose was to reassure the economy. Trade resumed, insurance rates stabilized, confidence returned. Blackbeard's body sank into the sea, but his legend grew. Songs, stories, and exaggerations turned him into a monster. The reality was more unsettling. He was not insane, he was rational. Blackbeard exploited gaps in imperial control. He weaponized reputation. He understood leverage, supply chains, and fear. His success revealed the fragility of systems that claimed global dominance. He did not reject empire, he exposed it. Blackbeard thrived because the empire needed violence without responsibility. When that violence became inconvenient, he was destroyed. His life traces the boundary between legality and profitability, between order and chaos.